Good morning and welcome to State Senator Beau Ballard, legislative candidate from District 21. Thank you, Senator Ballard, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today is Susan DeCamp, Volunteer State President, and Advocacy Lead Volunteers Joyce Beck and Mike Barwig. We also have joining us this morning AARP volunteer Donna Bowles, and Senator Ballard, she is also a constituent of District 21. Senator, we appreciate your taking the time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter and their families in Nebraska. And as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. So to start us off, Senator Ballard, if you want to give us about 5 minutes of your time and a little bit about your background about yourself and your campaign, that would be great. And then once we've completed your opening, we'll move over into the questions. So welcome, Senator Ballard.
Perfect. Thank you, Gina. Thank you so much for having me. This, like I was telling Gina before, this is one of my favorite candidate interviews that I do quite a few, more than I initially thought, but this is one of my favorite just because I enjoy the topic and the discussion of how we can make the 50-plus community in Nebraska better. So my name's Beau Ballard. I'm originally from Raymond, Nebraska, born and raised in a value-add ag family. Small business family, went away to college in Denver, but came home to be closer to aging grandparents and parents. And so that's kind of where my heart for the AARP platform and initiatives stem from, is that if we don't take care of our 50-plus folks, it's going to be hard for us to recruit and retain young people in this state. Because that is why a lot of my friends, that's why my wife came back to Nebraska. That is why a lot of my friends come back to Nebraska. And so if we can make an atmosphere or a economy that's good for folks, the 50-plus community, I think it would be good for Nebraska as a whole. So a little more about myself. I started a small business right after I got out of college. Went really well, taking more initiative in my family business. As my parents getting close to retirement age, they say they're going to retire soon, but I don't think they ever will. But it's been a pure joy being back in Nebraska and being part of a family business. Joined my predecessor, Senator Mike Hilgers, on his campaign team in 2016. And then transitioned into his legislative office shortly after in 2017. Enjoyed the 5 years I spent with Senator Hilgers. And so when the opportunity came, when he was elected Attorney General, an opportunity came to fulfill the remainder of his term, jumped at the chance. Didn't think I had a chance because I was a 20-something-year-old business owner, but had a great conversation with Governor Pillen, and he entrusted me with the voices of 40,000 people and my friends, families, neighbors in District 21. So that's a little about myself, but looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Senator Ballard, and thank you for your service the last few years, and of course as an appointment in the legislature. We appreciate that. As also on the HHS committee, I know that's a tough committee, so appreciate your leadership there as well. Yeah, we're now going to move into the questions portions, and we provided you with a set of 3 questions pertaining to 50-plus in Nebraska. Looking to allot 5 minutes for each question just because of our time constraints. But our first question is an area I think you're very familiar with, again, being in the Health and Human Services Committee, but it's on health, caregiving, and home and community-based care. And Joyce Beck is going to take that. So go ahead, Joyce.
Good morning, Senator Ballard, and thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
It's good to see you again, Joyce.
Good. 84% of Nebraskans over 45 say that staying in their homes as they get older is extremely important to them. Home and community-based services and area agencies on aging become important assets to caregivers as they care for their loved ones. Home care not only meets the needs of their loved ones, but it also provides relief to an already strained long-term care industry. So I have 2 questions for you, Senator Ballard. The first one is, what would you do to protect and or expand home and community-based programs, particularly recruitment and retention of sufficient workforce and adequate funding for the programs and services that older Nebraskans and their families rely on? The second question is, What would you do to support the 179,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska?
Yes, I appreciate the question, and I believe we through Senator Beau bill a few years in 2023, a bill which I supported. I think it's great because, like you said, it's a large group, a large population that are taking a financial hit by jumping out of the workforce to take care of their aging loved ones, and so any way we can support that population, I think is a win for Nebraska. And if I mean it's proven through data is that when people stay in their homes, they're happier. They have a better quality of life. Uh, and so any way that we as Nebraskans in the legislature can support that, I am fully supportive and looking at any way we can expand that. And to your first question, sitting on the HHS committee, we have to differentiate between how an expenditure and an investment. And so when utilizing our dollars. And so I view investments in Medicaid and other services dealing with healthcare as an investment. And so we're not on the back end paying for a larger portion of care. And so how we invest in making sure that our aging population is taken care of, I think is a good investment for Nebraska.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senator Ballard, and yes, thank you for your support of the caregiver tax credit bill. We're excited to see that launch in January and do appreciate your support of caregivers and hope that we can continue to expand and to provide that support to them moving forward. Our second question now, we're going to switch over more into consumer fraud, exploitation, and protections. Another area I think you have some familiarity with on the committee that you serve, but Mike Barwick's going to take that. So go ahead, Mike.
Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Scammers are increasingly targeting older adults with scams such as wire transfers, gift cards scams, and schemes involving real property. Nationwide, the average victim of elder fraud lost nearly $34,000 due to these crimes in 2023. And in Nebraska, the FTC showed that there were 4,643 fraud reports made. Nearly 9 in 10 consumers agree that lawmakers need to do more to protect consumers from fraud and scams. With that in mind, our questions for you are: consumers lose billions of dollars each year to online financial, property, and other types of fraud. What will you do to address and ensure that Nebraskans are protected against fraud and deceptive or unfair business practices, and provide opportunities for redress to victims of fraud? In other words, would you, 1, enacting laws to require merchants that sell gift cards to post notices? 2, enactment of a consumer fraud restitution fund? And 3, implementation of preventative or corrective measures to assist in combating owner-seller housing impersonation fraud?
No, I appreciate the question. It's a bill that we heard in the other committee I sit on in banking and insurance and commerce. I think it's simple. I grew up in a family business we own retail shops as well. And so we fully recognize how to look out for fraud and make sure that people are not taken advantage of. I think each one of us have a story about, I just received a call from my grandmother in Grand Island. She said, she called me, this was just last week. She said, "Hey, I received a call with your voice on it that you needed X amount of dollars to get out of prison." And these scammers they're getting very it's more than just hey, send a prince in Nigeria $1,000. It's getting very intricate and very detailed. And so how we can catch up as public policy makers and make sure that these individuals are protected. I think working closely with the Attorney General's office, consumer protections, how we can better sure that Nebraskans are protected. But yeah, I do support the notice on the cash register of something as simple as, hey, just be aware of this and make sure you're not being taken advantage of. I think those are basic steps that we can undergo to make sure that Nebraskans are being protected.
Thank you, Senator Ballard. And just on, obviously, yes, you've heard the gift card fraud piece. I know cryptocurrency is now, Bitcoin are now the next new thing. And so, you know, entertaining that idea of being added on with something with gift cards as we move forward. So just a heads up, as we move into the next session, you may be seeing, and we may be asking for some help for you on behalf of that as well. So you're right. AI and everything else with fraud, it continues to just keep getting more and more out of control. And so we have a lot of work to do. So appreciate again your support of those initiatives. Our last question now, we're going to switch over into a third category, which we call livable communities, and it's helping people stay in their homes and communities. So Susan DeCamp's going to take that. Go ahead, Susan.
Good morning, Senator Ballard. Nice to have you with us today.
Yes, good to see you again.
Sure. And my question is a two-part question. The first part relates to housing here in Nebraska, particularly for the elderly or older adults. And then the second part is in regard to taxes, homestead exemption. So Nebraskans over 65 are the fastest growing segment of our population, and research shows that most of them want to remain in their homes and communities as they age. As housing costs continue to increase, older adults are unable to find housing to meet their needs when seeking to downsize, and thus they are being pushed out of communities and homes they have lived in for generations. What will you do to support, incentivize, and ensure the creation of affordable and diverse housing options, such as accessory dwelling units or ADUs, intergenerational housing, manufactured housing units, and townhomes? And then the second part of the question is, will you fight to ensure that the homestead exemption program is maintained and protected to ensure that older Nebraskans who qualify continue to have access to that tax relief program that allows them to age in place?
Yes. Thank you for the question, Susan. I'll take the second question first. I've knocked on almost, we'll say, between 14 and 15,000 doors this campaign cycle. And that is the number one thing I hear from a population of 50 plus is property tax. A lot of these individuals are on fixed income, and they say, hey, I've done my part. I've worked all my whole life. I've paid off my house, and now I'm on a fixed income looking to spend time with my loved ones and go on trips and do all these fun things. And I can't afford to live in my house anymore because of property taxes. And so how we can, yes, I will support the homestead exemption, hopefully expanding that into a larger reach. But I think what is good to reduce property taxes is good for not only 50 plus Nebraskans, but also Nebraskans buying their first home, and everyone in between. And so how we better support Nebraskans in property tax relief is key. And first question, I think housing is one of the top, I would say, 3 to 4 issues in this state. How we tackle the housing crisis, I think we could support between another 80,000 homes in this state, and help attract a workforce. But I'll give you a quick story. We're trying to build a house for an aging member of our family, and trying to work with the zoning ordinances in this county has been difficult. And so it's a fairly simple house, and we thought, oh, we just throw it on our land and it would be okay. But that's not the case. And so how we work with local governments, counties, cities, and make sure that, yes, you don't want a ag producer in the city of Lincoln right next to your home. No one wants that. But at the same time, can I build a 1,000 square foot house next to my home that has my mother-in-law in there, living there? That should be a conversation we have with local governments, and making sure that they're not overstepping their red tape to protect citizens, but in the same time harming affordable housing for aging populations. And so I'm very interested in that proposal, or how we have those conversations about housing and more affordable housing in the upcoming session.
Great. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that topic, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ballard. And this is a priority for AARP and we'll continue to work on it. I know there were a couple bills last session that Senator Lowe had, LB 1165 and 1166, that specifically allowed zoning flexibilities in municipalities and cities for ADUs. They didn't get out of committee, but Senator Armendariz has picked those up and has a continuing or a study resolution that's coming up for hearing on October 4th, LR 441. We are working with a lot of groups, and really the point of that is to try and figure out moving forward what we can do to expand affordable housing instead of just putting money in the trust. But also what can we do to incentivize cities and municipalities to allow some of those things? Obviously, the biggest concern is taking away that local control, and so trying to figure out how we can work around that. But you're correct. The zoning restrictions a lot of times for an ADU or just building another home on site is cumbersome. And so those are the things we, again, want to work through. And so appreciate your interest on that as well.
Yeah,
we are coming to the end of our time now, Senator Ballard. So I would like to give you a few minutes back to talk about what your priorities are for serving in the legislature, as well as if you have any specific issues you plan to work on or address during your time as a state senator moving forward.
Yes, I appreciate this conversation. My priorities have been talked a lot about in this conversation: property tax, housing, bringing young people back to Nebraska. But I think the one I would like to highlight towards the end is just workforce, especially in the medical field, for nurses, doctors. I think the baby boomer generation is getting to an age where they're going to need more healthcare, and we just don't have the healthcare staff to support all the needs. And so how we can, whether that's cut red tape or investing in nursing programs, trying to get more healthcare professionals into the state is going to be key for keeping people in their homes and also keeping them healthy. And so any way AARP has any ideas or any thoughts, I would love to hear them, because I think that's going to be one of our greater challenges going into the next few years.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator Ballard. We definitely plan to have future conversations with you when you get back to the legislature. We appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today. Wish you the best with your campaign in the last few weeks. And thank you most importantly for meeting with AARP today.
Yes, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you.